David Rockwell's work uses the power of design to transform ordinary spaces into living theater. His range of work is as diverse as his ever-changing style. His current projects include the new Rosa Mexicana restaurant in Lincoln Center, the W Hotel at Union Square. He also recently completed his first Broadway project as set designer for the Rocky Horror Show. Here is a look.
Whoa.
No, this isn't the Junior Chamber of Commerce, Fred.
Janet, they're probably foreigners. In ways different than our own. I mean, they may do some more folk dancing.
Look, I'm cold, I'm wet, and I'm just plain scared.
I'm here. There's nothing to worry about.
All right, don't leave me alone.
How do you do? I see you've met my faithful handyman. It's just a little brought down because when you knocked, you thought you were the Candyman. Didn't you? Don't destroy now! By the way, I love, don't judge a book by its cover. I'm not much of a man. By light of day, but by night, I'm one hell of a lover. Just a sweet
I'm pleased to have David Rockwell at this table again and talk about not only some of the work that he has done, but also some new adventures. There's also, you got an award, which I want to take note of, which was the Grand Central Terminal Restoration and Renovation. Has been selected for a presidential award. Congratulations.
It has indeed.
You were, I mean, how many projects do you have underway at this very moment?
Probably about 10 or 15.
Do you really?
Yeah, 10 or 15 at various stages. Some are very active, some aren't so active.
Yeah. And how does this firm of yours work? Do you, in a sense, obviously, you know, it all springs from you, and you've got a lot of talented people that work with you. And as you jump from project to project to project, do you have sort of like team ahead for each project?
Well, it's one of the reasons why I love theater so much. The model of collaboration in the theater is that there's a team approach.
Right.
And so our office is organized into small teams, and it allows me to focus at the beginning of projects, which is where I'm really interested.
Right.
And there's that obsessive quality that's important to our work to get it really done. And it takes a real team committed to it to do that.
This is the first thing you've done in terms of stage?
It is. It's something I've talked about for years, and it's one of those things where I think you sometimes don't expect to actually get what you ask for.
Right.
And so for so long...
Be careful what you ask for.
Theater had been a foundation to our work, so now we got to do one, and it was a thrilling, thrilling experience.
How is it different? How is it more challenging than the other things you do? Restaurants, hotels?
The driving force in a play is the story and the director.
Right.
And I think I'm more used to in architecture being a little bit more in the role of the director. And this is a case where I was just blown away by how a team like a choreographer, a set designer, a lighting designer, prop designer, director work together to evolve this story. And then it happens every night. You don't get that exact kind of electricity in architecture in terms of this thing recreating itself every night.
Looking at architecture and looking at design, and I'm not sure where one ends and the other begins. Do you know?
No, I think that what's exciting to me about architecture is the fact that there is no boundary, and that there is, from our point of view, this ability to merge, to bring in the notion of theater, to bring in the notion of landscape. So I think they merge.
I mean, architects design products.
Right.
Michael Graves is an architect, designs products. Frank Gehry designs chairs and other things.
Yeah.
You know,
and now we're seeing product designers beginning to design architecture, in the case of Karim Rashid.
Yeah. What turns you on the most? I mean, the whole combination of things, or one kind of thing versus another?
I'm incredibly intrigued by newness. And it's one of the reasons why we have such a range of projects. I find the idea of invention something that is very seductive to me. And I think the goal of creating a space that delights people is a really pretty fabulous job to have. So I look for inspiration in newness and in sort of contrast of things rubbing up against each other and taking things that you might have seen in one context, and by the friction and the combination of them, you get to see them in a whole new light.
We have talked about this in another context, but I'll repeat the question sort of in a sense. What does a restaurant have to have? I mean, if you look at all the restaurants now that you design, other people design, I mean, there's a new restaurant here, which I went to the other night, terrific, in which it's like the Buddha Bar in Paris, which
Right.
you know about.
Right.
You know, what does it have to attract attention other than good food?
Well, okay, so I can eliminate talking about good food.
Exactly.
I think it's got to have a real, authentic point of view. And I think that design can certainly help a restaurant get some initial attention. But if there's not a real integration between food, service, and design, I think what happens is the experience feels out of balance. One of the things that I'm intrigued by is that someone like Jean-Georges, who we've worked with before, who's all about combining different ingredients, kind of an alchemist.
Right.
His point of view, I would argue, has some relative value in design. You know, is an inspiration, using the food as an inspiration for design. So I think the most important thing for a restaurant to succeed over a relatively long period of time is an authentic point of view, like a script in theater.
Yeah, is it exactly the same thing for a theater, for a hotel?
I think hotels are a little bit different. Hotels are broader, you're spending more time there. A restaurant, you're going to spend an hour, 2, 3 hours at the most at a very high-end restaurant. A hotel...
And the food is a real payoff.
And the food is a payoff. And in a hotel, you're going to spend the night there, and you have a chance to discover every design flaw in the room. Yeah. Every 6 inches that the light switches.
But is it the room design that makes a difference for a hotel, or is it the common quarters?
I think it's both. I think there's as many choices of types of hotels as you can imagine. I think what's interesting about hotels is that every possible physical need you and I have in a hotel room somewhere has been addressed. There's nothing new to do in terms of function, so we're left with fantasy. Yeah. We're left with hotels, to some extent, creating this image of who we want to be. So you can step into a new fantasy that can be about the room, or more and more is about the public space.
Roll tape. I mean, here are some stills we want to take a look at. This is the W Hotel at Union Square. The outdoors is brought inside for the hotel. You tell me. The lobby features living topiary columns, topiary columns, a lobby check-in desk made from wheatgrass.
This was a case where there were a couple of things about the location of the project that were fascinating to us. This is on Union Square. Union Square being this, I think, amazingly theatrical space that transforms with the fresh market there and all of that. So we wanted to bring that park indoors. And what more kind of surprising or delightful thing could there be than checking into a hotel and having the walls be alive?
Yeah.
So that was one big idea. And the other notion was, if we could make the walls undulate with plants and wood, we could kind of conceive of the space similar to fashion, the way corseted forms shape a room, that the walls would create this corseted form, and that ornament, in this case mother of pearl, would be applied just as a little bit of detail.
Take a look at the first view of ceiling from staircase, second lobby seating area.
This shows one of the lobby views out towards Park Avenue, and it shows one of 3 walls that's an invented system we developed with 2 landscape people, of a topiary wall that's alive and growing and changing, and I think creates that sense of unexpected and sort of magic.
Next lobby view of the entrance of the lobby.
This is looking from the hotel check-in to the sinuous wall on the left, wood, the topiary on the right.
Right.
And again, ornament conceived of is just a small detail, somewhat related to 1911. This building was built in 1911, right down the street from Louis Tiffany. So picking up on its location.
Next is a staircase.
This is actually my favorite image. The staircase leading to the second floor is lined with a cut metal railing developed by a woman named Fran Taubman. These are laser cut steel pieces.
Wow.
And then the entire space is filled with wheatgrass. So your trip up this stair is escorted by this wonderful growing material.
Next thing is the Rosa Mexicana restaurant. And there's a famous stairway up to the second floor, which you said to me as we sat down, that what you have to do in a restaurant, if there's a second floor, is make it exciting to go upstairs.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned early on from Drew Naporn, actually, a New York restaurateur, is as a designer, one of the challenges we have is to make the undesirable locations desirable.
You did what did you do for him?
We did Nobu. We did
right.
Next Door Nobu.
Right.
We redid Tribeca Grill, so we've done a bunch of things.
Okay, next thing is a wall beside the staircase. There it is.
This was a case where we got to combine, looking at theater as inspiration, we got to combine 2 dissimilar things. One, sort of the plainer, more modern aspect. You'd think of Mexican architecture, certainly inspired by Luis Barragan's work.
Right.
And then the other less expected thing, which is the kind of obsessional folk art that you see in markets. And I was intrigued by what would happen if we combine those. So we found this artist named Guido Zwicker, who we worked with to carve these cliff divers, that 200 of them float off the wall.
All right, the next thing we'll see is the Chambers Hotel. This is a edgy, subversive style with luxury and refinement. Where is this located?
56th Street, just west of Fifth Avenue. That's Norma Kamali on the right, where you see the gold banner.
Oh, sure. Okay, so tell me about this. First slide is the entrance to the hotel exterior. Next is a sketch of the hotel lobby.
Hotel opens up end of January.
Yeah.
And it's our first ground-up building in New York, so it's kind of exciting.
Your first ground-up building, meaning what? The first one where you walk into a building that you designed everything
right,
from the ground up.
And we collaborated with several other people in the design of the building, but our role was from beginning to end. And the building is relatively subdued other than the doors. The doors are exuberant carved walnut. And I think as an analogy to a theatrical experience, which I know I keep going back to, I think there's something fascinating about doors. I think doors symbolize a place where we can change and we can transform. And indoors, once you get in the lobby, there's 500 pieces of art, most of it site-specific. Even the elevator lobbies, when you get off each of the 14 floors, there's an installation by a different installation artist.
Right.
That over the last 3 years we've curated, and Michael Beirut of Pentagram is doing a catalog of the art. So there'll be a very unexpected residential spin to the luxury hotel here.
I want to get into a couple of things before we go. One is the Pod restaurant in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
The kind of.
Well, this is on the University of Penn campus.
Right. This is a view of the bar, obviously.
Well, this is a case where bar and restaurant meld together.
Yeah.
And it's in a very traditional location. And we wanted this to be a space where light, whereas in Rosa Mexicana we used water as a design element, I guess in the Guardian W we used plants as a design element. Here light is used to paint this room. In fact, if you look in the distance at that blue room, I think the next slide is a close-up of that. These rooms bathe the diners in one of 9 colors of light that they can select. So you're actually interacting with the environment in a really playful and delightful way that makes people want to be there.
Right. Light makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it?
Yep.
And to use color. Take a look finally at the Rocky Horror Show. We'll see about 3 slides here. First, the stage, which sort of describes the proscenium and the chandelier.
And the stage, actually, one of the things that's fantastic about doing live theater is that you can have physical things that transform right in front of you. And that visceral transformation is something that I think is unduplicatable.
Okay, next slide is transition from screen to stage. Next slide is the Frankenfurter's Lab.
Frankenfurter's Lab, in Circle in the Square Theater, there's no fly space.
Yeah.
So this literally unfolds like a transformer toy out of the ceiling down to the ground.
Next slide is transformation of movie theater into a castle.
The most startling transformation is when you enter the movie theater, we're encouraging audience participation. It's what the director wanted to do. So we have 34 seats where the cast members sit when you come in.
Yeah.
And it starts out as a tribute to B movies from the 50s. And when it goes to the castle, the floors hinge and flip up into the air. The proscenium splits, and what you've seen as kind of the expected traditional environment turns to a much more dangerous, much more kind of unconscious place.
Talk to me about what you think the perception of you is, and if you do things like this, whether it brands you as sort of, or limits you in any way, so that certain kinds of projects don't come your way.
We are so thrilled to have the opportunities that we have in terms of theater, both real theater, which was a dream come true for me. And I'll give you an example of where I think theater takes us to more traditional architecture. Airports couldn't be a more miserable experience. Now, a lot of that is because of the logistics. There's not enough runways, there's not enough slots. Right. So I think there's a lot of architects who can work to figure out the best logistics. That's not where we're going to have our impact. We're looking with some people at developing airport concepts that take the same excitement of Central Park with its edge butted up against the city, with its combination of very choreographed paths and then big open fields, and looking at that analogy for airports. So when you think about getting past the expected in the fixed part of the ticketing, what you enter might be something really incredible, might be alive, and might be analogous to a park. So I actually think that the theater offers us new opportunities, and for me, the chance to develop new projects is the thrill.
David Rockwell, thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you.
See you again.
Nice to be here.